Hey, what's up everybody? It's Christian with Reaper Discs, and today we're going to be taking a look at Discmania's newest release, the Creator Series Rainmaker. The Rainmaker is currently offered in Color Glow D-Line plastic in the Flex 3 stiffness. The Rainmaker is a deep dish putter, beadless, very similar to the P2. Stability-wise, it is slightly overstable. It's not going to be as overstable as, say, like a Tactic or anything like that, because this truly is a putt and approach disc, not just an approach disc. But as far as that goes, it is going to still carry a little bit of good stability. When I got this out in the field and was testing how it flew, I threw it on a variety of different release angles and quickly started realizing that this has a very, very good flight, similar to the older P2s that I used to throw a lot of. So when I threw it on hyzer, it pretty well remained on the hyzer angle, but continued to push straight and forward. It didn't have the big sweeping arc that typical hyzer shots do, but for the most part, it still finished left. It just had a little bit of a straight flight, even though it maintained a hyzer angle. When I threw it flat, it stayed flat. It never got all the way on a turnover, but it did drift from left to right a decent amount. Never faded at the end. It finished flat very gently, landed softly, and didn't hardly have any ground movement. When thrown on an anhyzer, I did give this a little more height and power than I typically would, but I wanted to see how it would, handle that angle, especially with enough time in the air to let it, have a full flight. It didn't even think about fading. It held the turnover the entire time, and once it got up in the air, the glide really kicked in and carried it from left to right a lot. I really wish I had a measurement of lateral movement for this as far as how far from left to right it really got, because it could have picked up a lot of distance just going from left to right. This was one of my longer throws with this disc, but for the most part, it still, it flew really, really good. I could definitely see myself using this for big anhyzer approaches, something like that I need to get up in the air and let float on an anhyzer and continue to move from left to right. By the time it got to the ground, it started to try to get flat, but there was no thought of fade in this disc at all. When thrown full power, it did flip up and get over to anhyzer, but it didn't hit that turnover like with an intentional Annie release. Instead, it had a lot of left to right drift, but continued to push forward and continue gliding and landed flat and soft. All in all, as a throwing putter, it is very, very good, very point and shoot, and typically it'll hold about any angle that you put it on. Alright, now as a putting putter, the Rainmaker is pretty typical of what I would expect a deep dish beadless putter would be. It was very similar to the P2, which essentially was the disc that it was modeled after. And in the Color Glow Flex 3 plastic, it felt very similar to some of the older Glow P-Line plastic as well. Plastic that I personally was a fan of, and I know a lot of people are. So if you're looking for a replacement for some of those really hard to find discs now, this may be something to look into. So around the green, I was finding a lot of success with it. Do bear in mind, though, that typically once you're inside Circle 2, the success is more dependent on you than the disc that you're putting with a lot of the times, but I'll try to explain how it felt when I was putting. So the plastic itself felt really good. It's very firm. I felt confident hitting some harder spin putts with it, as well as push putts. The mold itself feels really good. I personally putt with a beaded putter instead of a beadless putter. However, I was able to pick it up pretty quick and start hitting some decent putts with it. Whenever I got out to about Circle 2, I started trying to get some jump putts and some long distance spin putts in, and it felt really good. I was able to let the glide of the disc carry it toward the basket, and especially with those long distance spinners, I felt like I could just kind of point straight at the basket, give it a little spin, and it was just going to continue just to float straight where I was aiming it. So whenever I was missing, I was typically finding out that it was me that was missing the target, and with some minor adjustments, I was able to start knocking them down. So I decided to also go out a little bit further, about 100 feet from the basket, and try some approaches. I put it on a couple different angles as far as the approaches go, and it felt really smooth coming out of the hand. I didn't have any issues with it kind of fluttering around or not wanting to release cleanly. It released out of the hand very clean, very crisp every time, and I was able to repeat that time and time again. So this can be a disc that is very easy to get up and repeat the exact same shots over and over again and lead to a more consistent approach game. Whenever I got out and tried some obstructed putts, it would hold a hyzer putt pretty well. I did work around like a couple trees, get a hyzer putt or two in, and then whenever I started working on some anhyzer putts, I did notice that because the disc is a little overstable, unless you fully committed to it, it would kind of stall out and never get all the way to the right as far as you need it to if you're trying to hit an anhyzer putt. So you need to really commit to it in order to keep it moving from left to right. Otherwise, it's going to fall out early left and you're going to have a lot of left side misses. If you are able to fully commit to that shot, that stability actually helps carry it around the corner, and you can really do some pretty cool putts with this thing as far as getting a lot of left to right movement and still getting it all the way back to the basket. Finally, I wanted to see how the plastic itself would hold up. So enjoy this little bit of a montage sped up of me just absolutely torture testing this disc. So I went out for about 3 or 4 straight minutes and just hammered this thing close range straight into the basket. And I tried to hit every part of the basket I could. I kept slamming it repeatedly into the chains. I started shooting up and into the band. I got some down onto the cage itself. And then after that, I started throwing some approach shot power throws straight at the middle of the basket, all the way up to a couple half run up throws, probably about 60% power, straight into the chains just to see how it's going to hold up with repeated, hitting metal like that. Because this is a putter, it's going to find the basket a lot, hopefully. And I want to know how plastic is going to hold up if it's going to start beating up incredibly fast. And I can say that I'm very surprised. After my entire field day with this disc, as well as all the putting practice I put in on it, and then kind of the durability testing, this doesn't hardly have any outward signs of wear that I can find. Along the bottom of the flashing, some of the flashing did start to peel off, which is normal. I do expect that. There is one little nick right on the parting line, and I do believe that was from one of the shots straight into the cage. Other than that, there is some dirt and grass stain transfer, and I think it hit the mic, I'm sorry. That's about it. There's a couple spots where it started to get dirty and kind of like set into the plastic a little, but for the most part, just some very minor little scuffs on the edge, and that's it. I think I've got 1 or 2 small little dents in the plastic and one tiny little nick, and that's it. For the most part, this thing held up very, very well, and there are a lot of other putters that wouldn't hold up very well to that kind of testing at all. So that test did pass with flying colors. Overall, I really, really like the Rainmaker. Personally, if I putted with beadless putters again, this would be a disc that I would have a hard time trying to talk myself out of making my primary putter. The plastic feels amazing, it's very durable, and the mold itself is exactly what I would want in a putting putter if I putted with beadless putters. Myself, I putt with beaded putters, but this is pretty well what I'm looking for, and especially even in like an approach disc or kind of a throwing putter, the flight of this thing is very, very good. I was thoroughly impressed with the Rainmaker, and I think Discmania knocked this one straight out of the park. So, if you're excited to get your hands on a Rainmaker, head over to reaperdisc.com and grab you one today. Until next time, I'm Christian with Reaper Discs.